So it's been 5 years since Toronto was hit with that massive ice storm, and climate experts tell us that warmer winters actually increase the chances of more freezing rain. So what can you do to keep your family safe in the event of a prolonged power outage? Toronto Hydro suggests you should have 72 hours worth of supplies on hand.
So things that people are obviously going to be thinking about food and water, but it's really the amount of water that you need per person per day. We're talking about 4 liters per person per day, and you also have to think about pets because water doesn't always work in apartment buildings past a certain floor. So you really want to make sure that you have that on hand. The next thing people need to think about are having ready to eat and non-perishable food items. And then we get very reliant on our automated things. So having a manual can opener is also really critical, because what good is all these canned goods if you don't have a way to actually open them up?
And so water not only for digesting but also for like brushing teeth and bathing.
That's
or not
right.
Bathing, but brushing teeth, flushing the toilet.
That's right, things like that. The other important part about weathering an extended outage is staying connected. So I really like these crank radios because they don't require batteries. This one also happens to double as a flashlight, and it really keeps you in the know of what's going on and what you need to know about restoration efforts and, you know, even emergency evacuations, things of that nature. So having a lifeline into what's going on is really important. In the same vein, most of us rely on our devices for this information. So having a power bank that you can charge ahead of time and throw in your kit will really help when your cell phone battery is about to die or your tablet's going to die. You can plug it in and you'll get an extra boost of battery life. Of course, you can follow Toronto Hydro on Twitter for our latest restoration updates.
And Toronto Hydro also recommends you actually have some cash on hand. Don't rely on debit or credit during power outages, and write down some critical phone numbers, because if your cell phone is dead, you may not be able to recharge it. If you were living in the Toronto area in 2013, you'll remember this day 5 years ago when the GTA was paralyzed by a massive ice storm. Thousands of people were left without power for days. So if another storm were to hit tomorrow, is Toronto Hydro better equipped to handle it and turn the power back on faster?
It was Mother Nature at her best and her worst. The trees were covered in ice. I remember the sound of the branches breaking and falling. It was eerie with the lights out, no electricity, but it was also stunning.
Vivid memories of a bitter day. It was back on this day in 2013 when many parts of Ontario, including Toronto, were hit with freezing rain and drizzle over a 24-hour period. One of the worst ice storms in recent history.
I remember branches falling on my car and slipping and sliding around.
From Vancouver, and I was here 5 years ago during that, expecting a lovely family Christmas and arriving to no heat.
I was actually working the night that it hit, and it was unlike anything most of us had ever seen. And just seeing the city filled with ice, it was eerily calm and very beautiful.
27 people lost their lives, and the storm caused more than $200 million worth of damage. Hundreds of thousands of people were without power for days as city officials and power companies scrambled to restore electricity.
We look at restoring the largest number of people as quickly as possible, but we're starting with public safety issues, so hospitals, police, fire, and ambulance, and taking care of those things before we get to individual homes.
And Toronto Hydro says it's constantly coming up with new ways to restore power faster.
We're looking at ways to strengthen our grid. So things like extending the height of our overhead poles, and so that they're clearing tree branches. Installing things like breakaway wires so that it limits the damage. It certainly won't prevent outages like the ice storm, but it will help us restore power more quickly.
We were so lucky. Christmas Eve morning, it was back on.